Sumerian cosmogony answers many puzzles that still baffle modern science. Central to it was the tale of a celestial collision and knowledge of a solar system with 12 members. That ancient knowledge included the planets Uranus and Neptune, supposedly unknown until discovered in 1781 and 1846, and even Pluto, not discovered until 1930. But most surprising was the inclusion of one more large planet as the 12th member of our solar system. The story of this planet, as told by the Sumerians on their 7 tablets of creation, begins 4 billion years ago, when our solar system was much younger and our own planet Earth did not yet exist.
Out of deep space, there appeared an intruder called Nibiru. Drawn into the center of our solar system, passing by Neptune and Uranus and Saturn and Jupiter, it faced an older planet called Tiamat. When Nibiru, traveling clockwise, came close to Tiamat, which was traveling counterclockwise, its satellites struck Tiamat and cracked it. In a series of collisions, one half of Tiamat was smashed completely into bits and pieces. It became the comets, and became what the Bible and the Sumerian epic called the firmament, what we call the asteroid belt.
Fora TV, the world is thinking.
So let's talk about the moon and where it came from. It didn't always exist. So how did we actually get it? The moon has very low density compared to the Earth. Why is that? We have to be able to explain that away. Why does the moon have so little metal? That ties into the density. And the moon was actually once closer to the Earth than it is now. Interesting. So it's moving. Okay, so how did the moon actually form? So this is our best current estimate of how the moon and our solar system actually formed. And so the whole solar system started out with this, it's called the solar nebula theory. And so basically what you've got in here, you have this big cloud of gas and dust. So the cloud of gas and dust is out in the cosmos, and it begins to contract and spin in on top of itself. So it starts being pulled towards the center by gravity. Gravity always pulls things towards the center when you have this big mass. So things get pulled towards the center. The mass that gets pulled towards the center in the middle eventually coalesces and forms the protosun, which eventually becomes our sun. So you've got all these hot gases that are coming together, and you form a sun in the center. And then around this, now you've got this disk. You've got this mass comes in together, flattens into a disk. Now you've got this swirling disk of rocks and dust and ice and all sorts of junk. And so basically it's swirling around this sun, and as it's swirling around, there are particles and pieces of rock and dust and ice that are hitting each other. And as they hit each other, sometimes they hit and sometimes they stick. And when they stick, we call that accretion. So basically all these pieces come and stick together, and then you build up planets. And that's how our solar system formed. That's our best estimate for how the solar system formed. So as the Earth is going through this process, so we've got all of this material in this disk going around the sun, coming up, hitting each other, coalescing together. There's a lot of energy in those impacts when they're hitting each other, and so there's a lot of heat that's generated, and so you start to melt things. So the rocks themselves start to melt. And so that's what's going on here. You've got melting going on. So now you've got like molten rock, like lavas, like melted. When you've got melted rock, you can have the more dense material sink down to the middle. And this is what happened on our planet. So this is the process of differentiation. The technical term. So basically, as the solar system's accreting and forming, you've got this melted planet. all of the more dense materials, so as you can see here, all the metals basically are sinking down to the middle. They're into the core. That's why we have a metallic core, because it all condensed and then sunk down early on. The lighter stuff floats to the top. That's why the rocks on the surface of our planet are relatively light compared to metals, silicates and granites and that sort of thing. And so this is just the general process that happens on basically all the planets that are forming. So the important thing, though, is that all those metals, many of them are getting stuck down in the core, right? Well, how does this play into the moon? So when the Earth was forming, when the Earth was very young, baby little Earth, there was no moon. And remember I told you, in this solar nebula, you have material that's swirling around, hitting each other. Well, what happened to our Earth very early on is it got hit. It got whacked pretty hard. And it got hit by a rock that was on the order of the size of Mars. So it almost destroyed our planet. This is a huge impact. What it did when it hits is it ripped off the top part of our planet that was already undergoing this differentiation process. So it's ripping off that top layer of rocks. And so that material that was ripped off then gravitationally is bound around the Earth. So it forms its own little disk of material, of space junk that's going around in rocks and gas. And so that coalesces together through the same process of accretion, and that's how our moon formed. So our moon actually formed out of a giant impact of a Mars-sized body that hit the early Earth and then coalesced and formed the moon. So it's a very fortuitous event, and we're talking about randomness and chance in the universe, and arguably this is one of those events.
The other half, what we now call Earth, was thrust into a new orbital position. It carried along Tiamat's main satellite, which became our moon. Nibiru itself was caught into a permanent clockwise orbit around our sun, returning to our neighborhood once in every 3,600 years and forever becoming the 10th planet of our solar system.
This tale of creation echoed through all the ancient cultures, becoming part of the scientific knowledge that we find in the Old Testament, in the creation story of Genesis.
So, according to ancient knowledge, Earth was not originally a member of the solar system. It was the cleaved-off half of Tiamat, the planet destroyed in the celestial collision.
When today astronomers look for this planet, they call it Planet X. They mean maybe the unknown planet, but it's also the 10th planet. They called it Nibiru, which means planet of the crossing, and the ancient symbol was the cross, not from Christian times, but from 6,000 years ago. And they say that this planet, the 12th member of our solar system, has a very large orbit of 3,600 years, and every 3,600 years it comes between Mars and Jupiter close to us. And it is then, they said, that people that look like us, not with little horns or green, people that look like us, started to come between their planet and Earth about 450,000 years ago. Why do they look like us? We look like them. Because if you know the Bible, which is based on the Sumarian tales, at some point they engaged in genetic engineering and mixed their genes with the genes of Homo erectus. We can use various scientific terms, but let's say with early hominids to bring about Homo sapiens. Us.
Well, where did all this come from? And I think that you need to turn to the ancient Sumerians themselves and listen very carefully to what they have to say, because what they have to say, not just in one place, but over and over and over again, is that they were taught civilization by these beings that came from the heavens to the earth. They called them the Anunnaki.